from Singapore and to all our friends tuning in from all parts of the world. Thank you and welcome to today's session, where we'll be talking about innovation partnerships, China and Singapore. My name is Wei Min from SGInnovate, and for those who may know, SGInnovate is a government-backed deep tech investor and company builder whose mission is to help entrepreneurial scientists build deep tech startups that are looking to solve big global problems. Our work also involves building a global community of leaders, thinkers, and doers to drive and scale up deep tech innovations in areas such as AI, healthcare, quantum tech, and autonomous technology across various industries. Going back to today's topic, we are glad to present today's session with TechNode Global to take a look at how the rapid rise of China's technology sector leads to the development of local deep tech capabilities with its various stakeholders. We wish to dive deeper and share more about the partnerships that drive innovation with the country research institutions, corporate innovators, and VCs, which acts as an essential springboard for local startup growth. For today's webinar, we encourage for all attendees to share with us your thoughts on the topic or interact with our speakers by posting your questions in the Q&A tab located at the bottom panel of your screen. Otherwise, feel free to just say hi and do a quick shout out from where you are in the chat box below. With no further ado, do allow me to pass the time to Dr. Li Wei, CEO, Transform Ventures, to start off the session. Li Wei, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Li Wei. I'm the founder and CEO of Transform Ventures. Let me give everyone a very quick introduction about Transform Ventures. We are a cross-border venture builder helping Singapore tech companies enter China market. And also the Chinese tech companies coming to Singapore set up their operation here and to form the innovation partnership with universities, with research institutes here. So frankly speaking, I come in today's session with a lot of questions because we try to build an innovation partnership between Singapore companies and Chinese companies, and between the Chinese company with the government agencies, research institute, or Singapore company with Chinese research institute, universities. So we see a lot of very good opportunities, but we also see a lot of difficulties. We hear a lot of complaints and a lot of confusions. In Transform Ventures, we have our own answers and solutions, but today is a very good opportunity to learn from everyone, every panelist here, from very different perspective. And today I'm the moderator, and we have two Singaporean organization with China operation there, and we have two Chinese company with Singapore operation in our Singapore. So I'm very interested to learn from their experience, their knowledge, how do they view the challenges and opportunities for the innovation partnership between China and Singapore. Before that, maybe we can do a quick round of introduction. Irene, do you want to start first?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So hi, everybody. My name is Irene Cheong. I'm the group director at the ASTAR. So that's the Agency for Science, Technology and Research. My role at ASTAR is very simple. I work with companies to figure out how to solve their problems through technology. And we have 4,000 researchers at ASTAR, happy to work with many, many companies. So today, I'll share a little bit more about what we do in China, but looking forward to those interactions in the chat group later. Chat with you guys later.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Irene. How about you? Do you want to make a quick introduction?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Maybe good morning to you if you're calling from Europe. So my name is Leo, Chief Digital Officer for Huawei. My key remit is to build up the startup and digital ecosystem for our cloud and AI business. My job really is to make our tech, our support structure accessible to all the startups and companies who are interesting to work with Huawei.
Great, thank you. How about Dr. Jiang?
Yeah, hi. My name is Jiang Jing. I'm the director of our Singapore Innovation Center. And my role is to build the innovation network and ecosystem with the Singapore's innovation community. and to bring all the innovators, startups, partners to Hare Group. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Jiang. And how about Jackson? I think you are the coolest company here.
That's very kind. But my name is Jackson. I'm the founder and CEO of Myjaxx. We're sort of started in Singapore, the company, and we focus on creating digital collectibles and consumer products. So basically, physical collectibles that people collect, and also it triggers certain digital assets and deliver digital content to the direct users themselves. So we create a community based off your love for physical items, and that's me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for everyone's introductions. So I have a lot of questions, and here's what we are going to do. I have some common questions for everyone here, and I also have some specific questions for each panelist here. But if I see any burning question from the Q&A tag, I will just put the question on maybe one of you. So how about we start with some common questions that I have. So I've been working very hard to help Singapore tech companies enter China market and also build an innovation partnership for Chinese tech companies in Singapore with the research institute and university here. In your opinion, what is the biggest China opportunity for Singapore startup in your industry? It may not be related to the technology industry in the case for Myjaxx, but in your view, what's the biggest opportunity, and how can your company help them? And or what's your suggestion for them? Maybe we can start with Irene from ASTAR.
Wow, I feel so special today. You keep starting with me. So, you know, I think some of the obvious things I'm really excited about China is the size of the market. And I think for ASTAR, it's the size of the market and the amazing amount of talent that you have in China. So ASTAR, as you know, has recently started up a partnership center. And I can see that Chan Sing from the ASTAR Partnership Center is here as well. So there's some questions about how we can facilitate companies coming from Singapore into China and China back into Singapore. Please direct it there so he can get into some of the details with you. So in terms of opportunities, there's the size of the market. But I think from the perspective of technology, we see the demographic of China aging, and Singapore for us, we are rapidly aging. So there are many technology solutions that we see could be relevant to China and vice versa. So for us, that's one space, the whole aging silver tsunami area. We think that's low-hanging fruit, and sort of tied to that would be biomedical sciences. As you age, we don't want you to age quickly, we want you to age in place, you want to age well. And I think, again, there's some opportunities there in terms of biomedical sciences. The other space that we're very interested in, China has always been known to be the manufacturing powerhouse for the world. And so for us, it's what's the next step for manufacturing when we think about advanced manufacturing? What does that mean for China? What does it mean for Singapore? And some of those connections there. So I would say those are the two areas that ASTAR is very interested in, amongst many others. And the APC is investing more into bringing companies both ways through that. Thank you.
Very interesting. And I think I'm the only one calling from China. Right now, yes. I'm in Suzhou. And I just finished my last meeting, but because of time constraint, I cannot travel to APC. Actually, I booked the meeting room for these events in APC, but I cannot make my way there. But it's very, very nice place. And Transform Ventures, we are expanding our operation in Suzhou, and we're getting office there. We encourage everyone coming to Suzhou, where tech companies do consider APC as your home in China. Yeah. How about, let me see, Jackson, do you have any cool opinion about the question, the biggest China opportunity in your industry?
Yeah, now I feel very pressured because you said cool twice. But with I'm going to lean on Irene's question, sort of answer a little bit, right? Because first of all, the market is undeniable. Like that's something that's is quite the big picture of things over there in China. But I remember when I first got into I got into the ecosystem in China for sometime 2012 or so, and I began to meet a lot of people, both great international people and great local people as well, super talented. For some reason, everyone seems to be a scholar from each particular area, and it's daunting at first. But the truth is, it sort of teaches a certain work ethic as well. Like, and speed is one of those things that I think being a founder, I'm able to understand from there and sort of learn and apply to the operations that we have in China. So that's great. It's a bit of a learning curve, but I think ultimately, how do we understand the culture a little bit more and implement some of the work that we have done for the rest of the world, specifically into China, and capture the attention of the consumers over there or the partners over there. I think that itself is a massive thing to tackle, and it gives us such great insight to sort of implement that for the rest of the world as well. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, thank you, Jackson. Right now we have from the answer to this question is all from Singapore organization. Let's see some ideas from Chinese companies' perspective. Leon, do you want to start first?
Sure. Okay, so maybe just to decipher the question a bit, I think there's two parts of the question. Number one is the opportunity in China, or the biggest opportunity in China. Second one is that opportunity is relevant to my industry or our industry. I think first one, people who are looking at China or wants to come to China need to understand one thing, which is the market is very much driven and sensitive to policymakers. So you see examples about Belt and Road Initiative, which is very infrastructure-driven policy that is trying to help a number of countries along the One Belt One Road territory, and that was very much driven by the manufacturing power or surplus of the capacity in China and trying to export them and supporting the organization. And you see other policies recently, the RECP initiative, and then you look at the latest one, which is net zero emission. I think people in China are very sensitive to this, and a lot of sectors are. So if you look at net zero emission, I'm sure this represents the next biggest opportunity by I think it was 2060 or 2030, I can't remember exactly. I think 2060, that China want to achieve net zero emission. That means, in terms of energy saving, carbon tracking and monitoring, all the sustainability technology is going to be very, very concentrated, being the focus of China market. And that creates a lot of opportunities. And within our industry, so I think most people know Huawei because the infrastructure we build, the mobile technology, the consumer gadgets. So there are many things we build are relevant to this. Probably just give three. That would be, AI, cloud, connectivity such as 5G. So are very infrastructure centric. So within that industry, there's many things, related to tech that can power all the opportunity in China. So I think it's quite exciting to look at these opportunities and working with, with Huawei or somehow if we can help, we'll be very happy to be part of a conversation.
That's great. So how about Dr. Jiang? What's the biggest China opportunity from your perspective?
Okay, yeah. From our industry, we think the keep booming consumer market is the opportunity, and especially these years, the market is looking for the quality life. That's why here do the premium appliance. And I think recently in internal sharing, one of the retail shops, they say the Casadi, the premium brands, they take 60% of the sales of their hair appliances for their shops. Yeah, so example, so as this. And then now, in China with all these infrastructures booming up, and is IoT and data-driven market, and toward this market, here is also in the transforming to from this home appliance maker to this ecosystem builder. And we actually we don't want to just provide this single appliance, and instead we want to provide this package scenario, and also we want to work with their partners to co-create the value, to add the value to the users through this, so we call this ecosystem. Yeah, and to do this, here has 7 brands and has already create 300 scenarios. And we actually want to work with the startups, companies, yeah, in Singapore and globally to imagine together what's the next. Yeah, we call it Life X.0, what's the next. Yeah, and also I think driven by the market now, the China companies, they are quite hungry, desire for their deep tech solutions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jiang. And I think just now, from Leon's answers, from Jackson's answers, I noticed that forming the China-Singapore partnership, having a business in China, there's a lot of culture difference. There's a lot of difference in the business practice. For myself, from a personal experience, I've been working in Singapore for 20 years. Although I'm from China, but I never worked in China before. So once we set up Transform Ventures, I go back to China, it's like going to another country, a new country for me. So I have a really big culture shock. And I really want to hear from your perspective, what are the key challenges for the innovators, corporates, or startup to establish China-Singapore Innovation Partnership? Maybe I can start from a Chinese company first. Leon, you want to start first?
Okay, challenges in terms of working with China, China companies.
Yeah, try to form the China-Singapore Innovation Partnership. For example, from your experience, when you work with Singaporean tech startups, with them, what kind of advice for them so that they can build up this kind of partnership with Chinese tech company efficiently?
Okay. I mean, you could just count the challenges, and it will be more than your hands, right? More than it's more than a handful of challenges. I'm trying to think. Probably, I would say what's right in front of us is I think there is a bit of a cultural challenge. I think in China, people are. I think in our generation, we're born in terms of competition, like, people trying to get your attention, people trying to stay ahead of the game. So people are very demanding. And that comes across from the way they communicate, the way they work, and the way they compete. And I work with, I came to Singapore in August last year. So previously I've been working in Hong Kong for 13 years. I actually didn't really work like intensively in China, but I can feel the speed of, like, for example, Hong Kong versus Singapore is quite different, and the people expectation is quite different. I mean, Huawei is, people knows Huawei knows the way Huawei works is as a group, and it's very sort of aggressive in terms goal oriented. So I think the first thing that comes to my mind will be working with a Chinese company. You need to understand the Chinese culture a bit in terms the way they communicate, and sometimes it can be a little bit offending because it's just in our culture we're not really sometimes having been too polite about what we want, so it come across that way. But I think once you get into the business conversation, people are very open, especially to the new ideas, your capability. One thing that China do really, really well is just being a very open-minded. I think when people are closer, we are very open about opportunities and new solution. So I think one advice will be, just be as open as you can. Focus on your strengths. What have you done? Why you do it this way? And adapt to the Chinese culture in terms of how they communicate. And once you start working with them, things will be a lot easier because you build relationships through working with people, not just by telling them who you are and what I've done.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. And yeah, I personally also have very similar experience. I think the culture difference, sometimes we totally underestimate the difference in terms of culture because we see both of we're all Chinese, maybe we speak same language and the culture should be similar. But for the business practice, business culture, how the company works is very, very different. So for Transform Ventures, I have to travel back and forth even during the pandemic. I've been quarantined for several times. So I need to stay in China for at least 3 months to justify my the time for the quarantine. So after being in China for several months, I start to really sometimes get missing the Singapore working culture there because it's really very aggressive in China. So coming to Suzhou, coming to ASTAR Partnership Center is like a homecoming, and I feel very similar culture. The setup is very similar. And I know the center is designed by my ex-ASTAR colleague because I work in ASTAR for 10 years. And I know her personally. I know how she put in a lot of effort to design and really like a second home for me. So maybe Irene, you can share a little bit what's the challenges for the startup tech companies coming to China, and how can ASTAR to help them to overcome those challenges or difficulties?
I'm really intrigued now because you just indirectly call ASTAR slow in the context of China. So maybe before I answer that, I'm intrigued. So Leo, in your experience, when you talk about communication and communication style, what is so different about working with the Chinese? I think the audience would really value like some specificity. You guys are like, we're just different. We're just different. How different?
Okay, I mean, it's a very subtle, right? So obvious example, like if you go into a restaurant, Chinese people they'd be very direct about, they call your name and they will say, this is what I want. Give me this, give me that. Whereas I think being a more westernized country like Singapore, people have a little bit more courtesy. Like if you don't mind, could you give me this? I think very subtle difference does create a little bit communication gap. And if you can cope with that gap, then it won't be a hurdle. However, if you couldn't, and it builds over time, right? It start cripple your mind, like why people treating me like this? It's not the intent, it's just the way they communicate. Because over generations, people are brought up this way. So I think it's changing a lot more, with the younger generation. But I feel that just from very subtle, in life examples. Working wise, I think people are very professional. And as soon as you establish yourself, and people will be very easier to work with.
Thanks. And Liwei, what about you? What are these big differences from when you worked in ASTAR versus coming to China?
Okay, yeah, I think I really want to contribute to that point because for me it's a really big culture shock. One thing I want to highlight to all Singapore companies is about the meeting schedule. So in Singapore, the more important meeting you have to arrange it beforehand, like even a few months before the meeting to meet with someone really important. But I think Chinese companies and sometimes governments, they like to arrange the meeting at the very, very last minute, even very high level meetings. And at the very beginning, I really get uncomfortable because I think if this is so important, why you cannot plan it beforehand? And it happened to me one time. There was a very important event attended by senior officers from Singapore government and Chinese government. I have planned before my plan. When I landed, the plans changed and it's not confirmed. And the next day is the event. So it's really a very difficult for me to adapt to that kind of a business practice, the business culture. But other than that, if you get used to that, amazingly, every time they can get things done. So I just wait for the last minute, but I have confidence that we can still get things done. No problem about that.
Wow. It sounds like maybe the key skill to be successful in China is to be very adaptable, extremely adaptive, and very, very quick to respond to the situation. I can share from my experience. So prior to joining ASTAR, I was with NUS Enterprise. NUS Enterprise has been in Suzhou Industrial Park as well for a while now. We have a research institute and an incubation, quite a sizable incubation space there. And I think the stereotype is that many of our Singapore companies are not equipped to deal with well, firstly, language. Although we are all theoretically some way bilingual, but exactly right. Once you talk about business Mandarin, it's very, very different from the kind of language that we use in Singapore. So that was one big hurdle I observed from some of our companies going over. They didn't realize the distinction of the language that's being used. And then, I mean, we spoke a little bit about the nuance of culture and the speed at which they work. I think the other thing is the emphasis on a trusted relationship. And one big learning I took from the startups that I helped going into China in my previous role is that legal documents don't feature very highly. The legal documents are extremely simple. Whereas I think the legal documents I see in Singapore are so explicit, they go into every little bit of detail. Whereas the ones in China are written very elegantly, very, very simply, but the understanding of that we plan to work together. Right. So I think these were some of the big hurdles that we needed to get over moving into China, enabling some of our companies to go into China. And I think that's why, the likes of APC, the ASTAR Partnership Center, we find very helpful because having a trusted partner to work with, be it Transfong or the guys at APC, these folks are local. They have their own networks. These are trusted partners that you can rely on to find you the right people to start your first journey in China. And that's why we found it helpful to have the likes of an APC to help our companies. And these aren't small companies. These are companies with big plans for China, at least a landing place with trusted partners to get that first step into China. Thanks.
Great. Jackson, I saw you were laughing just now. Can you share your experience about the culture difference or any difficulties you are facing when you're dealing with China partners?
Yeah, so my Mandarin isn't great.
Okay.
So I resonate a lot with that.
Yeah, I was about to say you were laughing when I made that point. I'm like, ACS boy, maybe?
No, it's so bad. It's so bad because the business terms are entirely different and it's a world of its own and you don't quite get that. And so I got to make them repeat a few times, like, wait, what does that mean? Like, net profitability and all that. I mean, of course I know that in English, but in Mandarin it's a whole different thing. But that aside, the language and everything else, I feel like even when you go to different areas in China, like especially, they also engage in a very different way because at Myjaxx we do the whole supply chain part of things, right? So we do things in Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and to the front-facing part of things in Shanghai mostly. But each one of them has a different way of expressing certain things, So you sort of get to align with that a little bit. And same like you, Liwei, is that until I stayed there for extended period of time and I actually have a little scooter in Shanghai that I just go around, you start to get, okay, look, this is how they're going to do things. And most recently, when we work with Xiaopeng electric car. So the funny thing is that some of our IPs can actually go on to different kind of products that you never thought would happen. And Xiaopeng is one of those. And the way that their team work, it's almost embarrassing to say, it's almost every time they're chasing us for stuff, like they're just on WeChat the whole time. And it's just something that you sort of familiarize with. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think China is really big, and different parts of China have quite different culture. I think if you come to Suzhou, I think it's the business culture here is very similar to Singapore already. And but if you come to different other parts of China, and you will get some culture shock. And I think Dr. Jiang has very similar experience as me because we all studying in Singapore for very long. I don't know whether you have worked in China before, but right now you work in a Chinese company. in Singapore, right? Did you feel any difficulties?
I never work in China. I never work in China. I work in but I am always dealing with the China companies, government organizations. Yeah, I quite agree with what you share.
What do you feel? What's the biggest challenge for startups if they want to work Chinese tech company in China?
I think for the you may work with the Chinese company for Singapore startups.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a few things. First is I find some Singapore startups, they are more familiar with this local market or SEA market. They don't have enough knowledge about the China market, and also sometimes they do their development, the test bedding is for the enterprise level solution or for their government fund test bedding. That things, but that when the requirements, the commercial environment sometimes is quite different with the real market, real industry. Yeah, so I think this is one challenge.
Okay, I see. Yeah, maybe we can move to another question here. Because I think all of us here, we have some operation in Singapore, we have some operation in China, and I would like to know. Maybe speaking from the perspective of a foreign company, tech company in Singapore, what is the Singapore's value for your operation? And what's the positioning of your Singapore operation in view of your global business? But if you are a Singapore organization or companies, and what do you see your the China operation, and what's your China operation in view of your global operation? Maybe Jason, you want to take this on?
Yeah, I can share a little bit on that. First of all, setting up in China, it itself, it's quite a challenge. Right? There's a lot of jurisdiction and sort of things that you sort of need to work around certain areas to get that done, right? And I think that's why SIP, Suzhou and ASTAR will probably help in that area. We know that we got a lot of help from that. So with our Chinese operation, and we are based in Suzhou and also Shanghai later this year, is that we tend to look at our products from a geographic manner. So what we're going to do in China is specifically localized, run by great local talents that is able to translate a lot of the work that we do into a local context. And that is by far one of the most important lessons that I've learned, because you can't just force fit and sort of budge your way into market just because it's so big. It just doesn't work that way. And because we're a Singaporean company, so going into there, it's a challenge with the local companies as well, right? So we have to find our unique angle, our USP in a sense to approach that market. Now, if we look at the Singapore company, however, I think we have always been doing what we do best as a nation, right? We look at ourselves as a bridge almost, right, from the west to the east and vice versa. So we do that by working with international IPs or things like that, and funneling it into China, and likewise taking China IPs and putting it into the international stage part of things. So for us specifically, that works really, really well, and we tend to leave the Chinese team sort of almost an autonomous type of entity. Right? So I find that this way it works well for us.
So can I say that your Chinese company or subsidiaries will have a very different working culture from the Singapore side?
Yes, it's very different for everything else that we have mentioned, right? The speed, the size, and everything, and the approach itself. But I find that increasingly, right, those approaches, whether is it in e-commerce or other areas, could be adapted to the world stage as well, and it might make the whole company more efficient as a result. So we're thinking of implementing quite a bit of things in the Singapore company.
I see. Okay, yeah. Maybe this question I would like to ask Liu, because Huawei is one of the leading company from China, have very good international operation. So what do you think your operation in Singapore, and what's the positioning of your Singapore operation in your global business?
Okay, I think firstly we see Singapore independently, regardless whether it's Huawei or not a Huawei company, as a very neutral ground. I think that's how Singapore is always positioned. To Jackson's point, a bridge between the West and East. I think this is the value a unique value Singapore has to offer. From Huawei perspective, so Singapore to us is our Asia HQ for many of our business group, like our cloud and AI, our consumer, because of that reason. So the approach we take in Singapore is 70% of our employees in Singapore are Singaporeans. So we take a very international approach to this. And we try and expand our Asia influence out of Singapore, from our investment perspective. Dare to say, we probably invest more in Singapore infrastructure than other countries because we're seen that as a hub. From talent perspective, I mean, I guess if I have to say something about Huawei, we are internationally operated because that's just how business works. We're across 175 countries. There are more and more trends about localization. It's not as perfect. I think compared with the foreign company I used to work for, you're probably seeing more international faces. Where in Huawei, I think that's still improvement to be made, and we're doing that. And then in terms of culture, company are positioned English as the culture, as the formal communication and all management. Funny enough, from whether they use English as the day-to-day language, they're forced to use it, and it's almost a mandate to the job description. So I think Huawei tries really hard. So back to your question, so Singapore is very important to us as a hub, where it attracts the talents and investment, and also a voice to the outside world. Especially, I think, you could see there's a bit decoupling within the tech world. I think Singapore is in a very unique position to sort of link West and East. And we're very open about this, right? Singapore government have a great policy about smart nation. We're trying to be part of that. And we try to bring in the China tech into Singapore as well, and vice versa. So, it's we really think Singapore is a great country and a great spot to be.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And I just got one burning question from the audience. Very interesting one. I would like to have this one answered by Irene. I hope
so much love today. Okay.
Okay. One of our audience asked, I would like to ask how you think more and more local talents are moving to China, where such trend delay the local development of innovation. The reason I pick up this question because recently I attend one technology seminars in Shanghai and met a lot of Singapore friends there. So I didn't take this question as negatively because I feel local talent and Singaporean talent coming to China and is building up the connections, and there's a lot of friends here. I don't know whether, Irene, you agree with me this?
Yeah, so, I agree with your perspective. I think it's not negative at all. Interesting when you say delay. I don't think that, given the global gateway that Singapore is, I can't imagine that it will be a one-way journey. Much like your own experience or Jackson's experience, where you have to spend some time in China if you're really serious about the Chinese market. I imagine that these Singaporeans who are headed there are doing exactly that. You can't swim until you are literally there. And I think we encourage it, but we see it as a two-way street. Right, so it goes back and forth, and I think that's a lovely segue to some of the sharing I wanted to have around the previous question on, why is ASTAR in China? So I just realized we have international people on the call. Hi, from Singapore. For those who are not familiar with ASTAR, so the Agency for Science, Technology and Research is it a government agency, right? And we are an R&D organization. So why are we in China? What business do we have setting up in China? And because we're part of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, we see that gateway as being critical. And I think over the many decades that Singapore has been working with China, the realization of having a local presence is critical. And that's why we've got APC there as a first port of call. And I think there was another really interesting question in Q&A around how do you find a win-win situation? So the model that we're using in APC is this gateway, but we're not saying that the APC itself, the ASTAR Partnership Center, will be your gateway. Actually, it's the companies that are coming through that is the gateway. So I'll just depict what we have in mind. So we have a grant that allows and helps Singapore companies that are sort of middle range, not too big, not too small, that have very distinct plans for China to come through APC. The SIP guys, or the Suzhou Industrial Park folks, have some grants that help you set up. But what we really want to enable is to find partnerships for these Singapore companies to access Chinese market through that partnership. And similarly, because these guys are coming through our sort of mid-sized, they will also then provide that partnership back into Singapore, into the rest of Southeast Asia. So that's the model that we're working. So instead of us facilitating necessarily as a facilitative center, it's through the companies that we're bringing through to have that win-win portal going back and forth. And we've been very deliberate in the choice of companies that we're bringing through to China, because we want them to have the capacity to partner effectively both ways. So you partner with me to access Chinese market, I partner with you to access Southeast Asian market, and we do it together. And we think that also helps with cultural navigation, right? So Singapore, depending on if you're a Singapore company, you probably have representation across all the races, some cultural nuancing that might help you access the Indonesian market or the Thai market or the Vietnamese market versus directly coming from China. So that's how we're thinking about win-win partnerships through the APC and through ASTAR. That's why we're there.
Yeah, thank you, Irene. I think I just add on your comments, because this is definitely a two-way traffic, because for Transform Ventures, we're helping Singapore tech companies enter China market. We're also helping Chinese tech companies with their talents come to Singapore. And from our experience, because the challenge that Singaporean tech company have to face in China is really very hard for us to support them. We really need local partners such as ASTAR Partnership Center in Suzhou to give us more resource and support, so that we can together jointly from the public sector and private sector, we can support our companies here in China. And the other traffic is from China to Singapore. Over the last 2 years, in Transform Ventures operation, we actually bring more technology startup from China to Singapore. And those startups in Singapore is very different from the startups created in Singapore, because usually those companies created in Singapore is by very experienced Chinese tech founders. They have established very good industry connection, industry resource, market resource in China. They came to Singapore, set up the operation, have the partnership with ASTAR, and jointly develop the product, the technologies, and the way they commercialize the technology and the resource they can use to commercialize this technology is very rich. So they come to Singapore, have the partnership, they keep the R&D job, the high value job in Singapore, but for the technology commercialization, they can go to international market via Singapore, or they can go back to China to commercialize in China market. So this is really a two-way traffic and benefit both sides a lot. Yeah, I think really thank Irene's comments. And here is another question, is to Huawei, no, it's to Haier, to Dr. Jiang, is asking, many Chinese tech companies are setting up an innovation center here, and Haier is one of them. And what do you think about Singapore innovation ecosystem, and how does it benefit for your business here?
Oh, okay, thanks for the question. Singapore innovation ecosystem is also, we'll see in Singapore, my feeling first, we work with the key leaders, players very closely. Yeah, and also the government really play the leading role, like SGInnovate, Enterprise Singapore, ASTAR. And also I think as Aaron shared, so the government do come up the fundings to help the early stage startups and to cover the gap, to meet the for them to growth, and then we can have the opportunities to grab their market. And for us, the Singapore innovation ecosystem, the challenge is especially some tech startups is quite early stage. Yeah, and we do see some very good technologies in the university, in the research institute, or in the startups. Yeah, but it's quite early stage. But we're glad we have the opportunities to know them, and sometimes we can work together to verify these new ideas in the early stage. Yeah, but because the challenge also because it's early stage and the success rate is also very limited.
Yeah, and not just about early stage startup. I think even for an established business in Singapore, if they don't have the experience in China market, when it comes to China, it's really, really big. I mean, they are like a startup in China market, and the business model, the way they conduct the way of they manage their team will be very, very different from the way they manage in Singapore.
Yeah. And I think I also know a few examples of their startups, the companies, the Singapore companies. They really have firstly, they need really have their good technology. Your technology has the competing power, and not only in Singapore, or even not only in Asia, it's have the competing power in the world. For these companies, I do see they grow quite fast. They start from Singapore, but they grow faster in the China market, and then they grow in parallel both in China because China market is big enough, and also they set up the Singapore teams to grow their market in Singapore and to the Western country as well. So I do see a few of these success cases.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I have a question for Jackson from myself, because I just read some articles about Myjaxx. During the pandemic, most of the business was badly hit. But during the pandemic, I think Myjaxx has something really very innovative, create a very immersive experience for your clients. Can you share a little bit about that initiative, and how can you identify the emerging trend that shape the partnership during the pandemic period, whether there's good opportunity to innovate?
Sure. So as you all know, early last year, this happened, right? And I think in our market, we rely a lot of meeting the fandoms, we call it. So these are fans of DC Comics or whatever it is, and being able to engage on that level is something we do quite often in China as well. So it can be Beijing, Guangzhou, any one of these larger cities. It's a great fan fair, but of course we can't do that anymore. And we didn't want to lose touch, or rather, we don't lose connection with the fandom, and we wanted to provide a safe and space for them to interact in. So what we did is our internal tech team then went on to build a virtual environment where you can actually go into it as an avatar. It's almost like those Roblox games and Fortnite, the kind of multiplayer games that you could have an avatar representing yourself and just walk through a gallery of the products that we have, the artist information, some of this digital content. Then subsequently, you can also interact in that space and purchase items of it. So the intention wasn't to sell things, right? It's really to create that that digital form of the physical meeting once again, in such a pandemic. And what that does is that we then push it further and allowing our physical product to be able to trigger certain digital assets for the fans. So it could be NFTs, it could be unlocking certain avatar in that platform as well. So it sort of have a closed ecosystem that works very well for us, and the fans feel engaged, and there's actually an incentive for them as well. So that's what we did over last year. It took like 3 months to get that out.
Okay. From that, can you also share a little bit your opinion about during the pandemic, during the current situation, or maybe can you identify the emerging trend in your industry? Anything that during a difficult time, it's a good time for innovators to come up with new solution for the business?
Yeah, so we find ourselves, I think, I want to say sometime in December 2020, there was an IPO by one of our retail partners in Hong Kong, and they did incredibly well. They did 150 PE and they sustained it until now, which is probably only in China. It's one of those things, and we are in a space that we call gig economy. Right? It's all about popular culture, and you get adults spending thousands of dollars buying collectibles like that. And it's in the same space of comic books as well. But prior to this thing happening in China, no one really quite bat an eye at it. It's always thought of as a very, very niche type of product, right? But because of that successful case study, it works very well for the rest of us because it sort of pulls all the companies in the same vein of work, up all the way. And I think the West actually couldn't quite catch up to that pace, in terms of their appreciation for the work that we do. But funnily enough, it's China that gave it, I guess, a valuation of sort, or a statement of sort that, hey, this thing is working, in a market this huge. And yeah, that was a catalyst of a lot of the growth factors that we see as well through the pandemic.
I see. Okay, thank you, Jackson. I have another question for Leon from Huawei. So in your industry, maybe it's similar to the question asked Jason. In your industry, are there any specific industry that will be experiencing a rise in terms of investment, innovation, and growth in the region?
Okay. Well, before I answer that question, actually, I want to comment on Jackson's observation. I guess the company mentioned is a pop mart who has valued significantly high, surprise to the market. So I think that the rationale behind this is sometimes it's not the tech drive the new prosperity or the new model or the new trends. It's the way that you think about the world is fundamental to the changes. So I mean, I use Jackson, your industry example, right? So people who would think a gadget that designed for kids would capture largely the youth's attention and actually create a fanism or way of trends that get lots of people to just blindly buying it. I never bought one, but I can understand it. I think it's largely to do with the way you see people, the generation changes, and then you find a way to capture that change and try to make big out of it. So new trends coming up, a very few of them are actually driven by technology. My feeling anyway. I mean, if you look at pandemic, one thing I'm damn sure that is going to happen is I call it the contactless economy, which basically see people are shifting, retail, shifting restaurants from an offline to online to make it. It's quite different from the digital economy because digital economy is very much on tech, but contactless economy is about doing the things the same way. You're probably still going to continue within a physical environment, but you don't have to have a physical contact. I think that will have a much longer and bigger impact than we anticipated in the first place. So if you think about that, then the technology as a means is a secondary, whether you're using AI or cloud or IoT or 5G. And whichever way that can create and contribute to the contactless economy will benefit from that. Another thing, if you look at China, in China we'll call it geocircular economy. Basically, it's the way to say, as we are unsure about the outside, the demand from overseas, we want to encourage more, economy within China, right? So what does that mean? It means there will be more attention from the government to encourage local startups, new ideas, And it's not about the technology. It's more about how do you encourage more circulation of economy exchange within the society. So people, I think, just need to be very savvy about what's happening and take an opportunity. Think technology only as a means to it. I think for me, Singapore has a great advantage on this regard because you do have a very good access to the West in terms of what's happening. You take that into China or vice versa, it would also work. And from our perspective, we I'll probably take a little bit more time to explain, what Huawei does. So we launched an accelerator called Huawei Spark, which is to accelerate the startups as a friend and as a partner, and by giving out access to market, access to technology. That is something we really encouraging everybody here to get in touch with us.
Yeah, we are running out of time. So I think we answered most of the questions. At least a lot of my questions is answered, and also some of the questions from the audience. I always believe that creating a dynamic, successful innovation ecosystem in Singapore is not easy at all, because we are a little bit away from the market, and we're also a little bit away from the most advanced technologies. We need a lot of partners to work together. We need to have a partnership globally. We also need partners come to Singapore and help us to build up the global connections, to create the synergies with our resource, and maybe be more creative about the business model of our innovation partnership, so that we can have our own competitive advantage in the market and provide unique value and opportunities for innovators, entrepreneurs in Singapore and in China. So I think I have to pass back the time to Wei Ming. You want to do a quick closure?
Well, thank you, Li Wei, for a wonderful interaction with the speakers. I would like to represent SGInnovate to say thank you, and also to all the attendees who have stayed with us until now. Also, a big thank you to our speakers, Irene, Jing, Jackson, and Liu, for the great insights and discussion points shared by everyone. And to the attendees, once again, do keep a lookout for our post-event mail, which will contain a recording of today's session. And do reach out to us at events@sginnovate.com if you would like to connect with us or with any of our speakers to have a chat on collaboration opportunities. Do also remember to give us your post-event feedback when you exit the webinar or through the post-event mail as well. With that, this is Wei Min signing out from this webinar. I hope everyone will have a good day ahead. Stay safe, stay healthy. Hope to see you again in our next webinar session. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.